Have you ever wondered if kindness is real, or if it's just something we hear about in stories? What if I told you that even someone with the power to change lives, someone with millions of followers, could walk the streets with nothing and see if people would help them simply because they were in need? What if I told you that I, MrBeast, went undercover, disguised as a homeless man, to find out if kindness still exists in a world that's constantly rushing by? Stay tuned till the end to see what happens, and if you're ready to see what true kindness looks like, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join me on this unforgettable journey. You won't want to miss what happens next. The world had seen MrBeast, or Jimmy, make incredible transformations, giving away millions of dollars, creating massive charity challenges, and helping those in desperate need. He was a beacon of generosity, a larger-than-life figure. But on this particular night, as he sat alone in his office, a new idea began to brew. Amidst the acclaim and praise, Jimmy felt something was missing. He had made a significant impact with his generosity, but he began to question. Is it real kindness if people know you can change their lives with the snap of a finger? The fame, the wealth, the recognition, did they taint the way people perceived his good deeds? Sitting there, the weight of his thoughts deepened. There was only one way to answer this question. What if he could experience kindness without his fame, without his wealth, and without his YouTube following? Jimmy looked at his team, assembled around the table, excited as always to brainstorm new ideas. But this time, Jimmy's voice cut through the usual energy with a sense of seriousness they'd never seen before. "I want to go undercover," he announced, pausing to let the idea sink in. "I want to be homeless, out on the streets, and see who will help me when they don't know who I am." Chris, ever the skeptic, squinted at him. "Wait, so you want to be out there with nothing? No cameras, no fame, no MrBeast persona?" "Exactly," Jimmy responded firmly. "I need to see who will show me kindness when they don't know I can give them millions." The room fell silent. No one knew how to react to this unprecedented request. But Jimmy's eyes were filled with purpose. He was determined to see the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it might get. The next morning, Jimmy arrived early for the transformation. The makeup artist worked tirelessly, using every trick to create a completely different version of him. He looked in the mirror and barely recognized the man staring back. His face was dirt-smeared, his hair tangled, and his clothes tattered and worn. This was not the MrBeast the world knew. This was a man who was invisible, a person who could be ignored, unnoticed. He stood there for a moment, his reflection staring back at him with new eyes. "This is what it feels like," he thought. Later, the team dropped him off on a busy city street. Jimmy stood there clutching a simple cardboard sign that read, "Hungry. Anything helps." The street was full of people, some rushing to work, others chatting with friends, but Jimmy felt invisible. As time passed, the reality of his situation set in. People walked by without even sparing a glance. Some avoided eye contact, others just gave a wide berth, clearly uncomfortable. No one stopped to help, no one offered him a smile. He was just another person to be ignored in a world that felt too busy to care. Hours went by. Jimmy's stomach growled, his legs ached, but he didn't move. He couldn't. He had to stay true to the experiment. This was the reality of homelessness, the indifference of the world around you. But then, as he was beginning to lose hope, a woman approached him. She was in her 20s, carrying a bag from a local store. She glanced at his sign, and for the first time that day, she stopped. Her eyes softened as she looked at him. "Are you okay?" she asked gently, concern in her voice. Jimmy looked up, surprised. He wasn't sure how to respond, but all he could manage was a simple, "I'm hungry." Without hesitation, the woman reached into her bag and handed him a sandwich. "Here, take this. I hope it helps," she said, her voice full of kindness. Jimmy stared at the sandwich for a moment, feeling a wave of gratitude and surprise. It wasn't much, but it was enough. It was real kindness, unprompted, and completely genuine. As the woman walked away, Jimmy realized something profound. Kindness, he thought, didn't need to be loud or grand. It didn't need recognition. It just needed to be real. The next few days passed in a blur. Jimmy continued to live the life of a homeless man, moving from street corner to street corner. He was hungry, tired, and often ignored. But something began to change inside him. He was starting to see the world through a different lens. One afternoon, he walked into a small, run-down convenience store. The bell above the door jingled softly as he entered. Behind the counter stood an older man, Ahmed, who greeted him with a friendly smile. "Can I help you, young man?" Ahmed asked, noticing the exhaustion on Jimmy's face. Jimmy hesitated for a moment before speaking. "I don't have any money, but could I get something to eat?" Without a second thought, Ahmed picked up a loaf of bread and brought it over to Jimmy. "I've got this," he said, his voice warm and welcoming. Jimmy's heart skipped a beat. This was the first time in days that someone had offered him something without hesitation. "But why are you helping me?" Jimmy asked, genuinely curious. Ahmed smiled warmly, his eyes crinkling with the lines of age. "Because it's the right thing to do. No one should go hungry, and sometimes all it takes is a simple act of kindness to make someone's day better." Jimmy took the bread from Ahmed's hands, his eyes filling with gratitude. He hadn't expected such kindness, especially from someone who had so little themselves. Ahmed's act was pure, not driven by fame or recognition, but by a deep understanding of what it means to be human. As he walked out of the store, Jimmy found himself reflecting on the powerful lesson he had just learned. Kindness wasn't always about giving big, grand gestures. It was about the small, quiet moments where people chose to show care for others. It was the unexpected gestures, the ones that touched the soul. Days turned into weeks. Jimmy found himself navigating the streets, feeling the weight of his experiment pressing down on him. He met countless people, some cold and indifferent, others warm and caring, but the contrast was stark. The world seemed to be a mix of apathy and hope, of indifference and kindness. One cold evening, Jimmy found himself sitting on a park bench, wrapping his arms around himself to ward off the chill. His stomach growled, but there was no food in sight. The world passed him by, too busy to notice his quiet suffering. It was in these moments that he felt the isolation most acutely. This was the true reality of homelessness, the loneliness that came with being invisible. As he sat there, a young man approached, his hands stuffed in the pockets of his jacket. His name was Sam, and he had seen Jimmy on the bench several times over the past few days. This time, Sam sat next to him without a word. The silence between them was comfortable, as if Sam understood without needing to ask. Finally, after a long pause, Sam spoke. "You know, I've seen a lot of people out here, and most of them just ignore others. But I don't think that's the way things should be." Jimmy looked over at him, surprised. "What do you mean?" "I mean, look at us." Sam gestured around the park. "We're all just trying to get by. We might not have a lot, but we can still help each other. It's not about what you have. It's about who you are." Sam's words struck Jimmy deeply. This was the essence of kindness, he realized. It wasn't about wealth or status. It was about seeing another person's humanity and choosing to do something, anything, to make their life better. After weeks of living on the streets, Jimmy knew it was time to end the experiment. He had learned so much about human nature, but he needed to show the world the truth. It was time for the big reveal. Jimmy returned to Ahmed's store, where he had been given bread all those days ago. As he walked through the door, Ahmed looked up, his expression lighting up when he recognized Jimmy. "MrBeast," Ahmed said, his voice filled with surprise. "Yes," Jimmy replied, taking a deep breath. "I've been living as a homeless man for the past 2 weeks. I wanted to see what it would be like, to experience life without fame, without money. And what I learned here with you is something I will never forget. Ahmed's eyes widened. But why? Why would you do something like that? Jimmy smiled softly, his voice filled with a newfound wisdom. Because I needed to see if kindness still existed when no one was looking. And I've learned that it does. You, and so many others I've met, showed me that kindness isn't about who you are or what you have. It's about doing the right thing, even when no one is watching. Ahmed smiled, a deep, genuine smile. I always believed that, but hearing you say it means a lot. Jimmy turned to the camera crew that had been quietly filming this entire time, their presence now revealed. This experiment wasn't just for me, it's for everyone watching. The real question isn't whether or not kindness exists, but whether we choose to act on it when it matters most. As the crew packed up and the cameras were turned off, Jimmy found himself reflecting on the entire journey. The past few weeks had been a test of patience, empathy, and understanding. What he had learned through the experiment was nothing short of life-changing. Kindness, he realized, was not about grand gestures or fame. It was about showing up for others in their time of need, whether or not anyone was watching. And most importantly, it was about recognizing that every person, no matter how invisible they seemed, mattered. He had walked the streets as a homeless man, and in doing so, he had seen the best and worst of humanity. He had experienced the isolation of being ignored, but also the warmth of genuine connection. It was a humbling experience, one that had reminded him of the importance of treating others with respect and dignity, no matter who they were. As he looked out over the city from his office, Jimmy knew that he would never take his position in the world for granted again. The power of kindness was real, and it was something that anyone, no matter their situation, could choose to share. The world could be harsh and unforgiving, but in the quiet moments of empathy and generosity, it was also a place of profound beauty. Final lesson: true kindness doesn't need fame or recognition. It isn't measured by the size of the gesture or the value of the gift. It's about showing up when it matters most, without expecting anything in return. The power of kindness lies in the small, simple acts, the moments when we choose to see others as human beings, worthy of care, respect, and love. So the next time you pass someone in need, remember, kindness doesn't cost anything, but its impact can change lives. And you might just find that by giving a little, you receive more than you could ever imagine.